But I follow a lot of like the spoilers and the filming stuff,
Yeah.
and there was filming for season 6. You were seen filming, and I thought maybe
They plan to, how do you say it? I'm sorry. I just wanted to make a joke. It didn't work. Forget it. No, it was really just visiting them, and then we realized they were paparazzis, and we were like, okay, let's.
Well, you guys got us.
Game of Thrones Season 8 will most likely premiere sometime within the next 6 months. And in this video, I'm going to continue my duty of fending off the long nights. In this video, we're going to discuss 2 separate in-game leaks, air quotations there, that pertain to pretty much every single character in the cast. Now, they do mainly focus on Tyrion and Jon Snow, but as always, these videos are mainly meant for entertainment, and most of these so-called leaks have turned out to be a load of bullshit. But they're entertaining nonetheless. Now, as always, these leaks are meant to be taken with a grain of salt, and they may contain spoilers. Before we get started, please slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be 420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then make sure you have your notification turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. Also, consider checking out this brand new hoodie from the We Are the Hunt store over on Teespring. Let everyone know how you survived the long wait for Season 8. Now, usually I start by giving the background that these leakers send to me about how they have this inside information, but I'm going to save you guys of this video because we all know this is likely a load of horseshit and is for pure entertainment purposes only. So let's begin with the first leak. Okay, so this one starts off by saying the picture of Jon and Cersei was completely fake. And if you remember that small clip that I showed of this interview that I actually did with Shay from last year's Con of Throne, I was nervous as hell with, but she mentions how sometimes the producers intentionally film shit just to throw us off their trail, and whatever happens next season turns out to be a complete surprise. So them filming fake scenes out in public is not at all out of question. They continue on to say that Jon and Daenerys arrived to a situation in Winterfell in which the Golden Company has basically done a 20 good men type of situation and have ended up kidnapping Sansa, holding her hostage right outside of Winterfell. Jon apparently goes in place of Sansa with the promise that, or from Dany, with the promise that she will rescue him, and he explains there's no time for that and she must continue fighting the dead. Theon offers to go with because, Euron is the one who's taking Jon into King's Landing, and he kind of wants to save his sister. And Jorah explains to Daenerys that the Golden Company only follow Euron/Cersei because of the gold. Now, this is vital information, they say, and that becomes very key later on in the season. Jaime and a group of soldiers end up intercepting Jon en route to King's Landing with the Golden Company and Euron is killed in that process, but Jaime is ultimately captured when allowing Jon to flee. Theon remains as a prisoner and hopes to convince the Ironborn to join in his fight and ultimately rescue Yara. The Golden Company then escorts Jaime and Theon to King's Landing. They did include a bit more nonsense that I refuse to read in this video because I know it's just going to piss everybody off in the comment section, but they conclude their fleek with Jaime is end up killed by Cersei, and the way that this happened enrages Tyrion, and then when Daenerys and Jon ultimately defeat the undead army and the Night King, Tyrion allows Daenerys to lay waste to King's Landing once he learns of how Cersei had Jaime flogged by the citizens of King's Landing, and then he instructs Daenerys to strike at a certain location in King's Landing in which there's the highest concentration of wildfire. This completely destroys King's Landing and everything in it. Jon then finds out about this from Bran. Apparently Daenerys is somehow killed in that explosion of wildfire in King's Landing, but Jon finds out about this from Bran because, Bran has the green seer powers, and he delivers this info to Jon while a bunch of characters are present. Tyrion ends up accepting death, and he does not want a trial by combat since he decides that he doesn't want any more innocents to be, killed in his name. It does say that he's extremely upset with the fact that his plans or his actions caused the death of Daenerys, and Jon Snow is the one who ends up executing Tyrion, and supposedly this takes place in the Dragon Pit. Now, obviously, about 1 million red flags in that, and I think this person sort of came up with this theory after Freaky Doctor released his information about how Tyrion does end up betraying Daenerys, and then he's ultimately executed in the Dragon Pit. So following along with that information, I'm pretty sure that's where this person wrote the theory. But one thing I did like about it is they mentioned that, everyone always bitches about the pacing and how that's always an issue in Game of Thrones. But then they also mentioned that never forget, Game of Thrones is full of twists, lies, deception, and then also backstabbing. Now, like I said, this is sort of like a theory that was written most likely after Freaky Doctor came out with his information about the Dragon Pit scene. But one thing that I did like is the way that he says Tyrion ultimately betrays Daenerys and Jon Snow. Now, everyone immediately, myself included, when I was theorizing about Tyrion's betrayal back in January of this year and how that meeting with Cersei is crucial, that's the one thing that everyone jumps to is what is going to be his betrayal in killing Jon Snow. But what I like about this leak is how it mentions that what Tyrion does to betray Daenerys is basically he's pissed off as Jaime is end up, being flogged in the streets, and he just decides that the citizens of King's Landing and Cersei deserves to die, and his actions inherently caused the death of Daenerys, someone or, arguably one of the last people in this world that he loved. That I really liked about this leak. But you guys let me know your thoughts about that down below in the comment section. I'm going to go ahead and jump on to this next one. Now, this next leak has a few good moments, but ultimately it has a different endgame that I never really saw coming. So that's why I decided to include it in this video. So this person starts off with supposedly this information happens between episode 2 and episode 3. So sometime during that time frame, Daenerys receives word from Melisandre that Melisandre is successful in her quest to bring the Order of the Red Priestesses into play, and that they have sent soldiers of Valour to fight alongside Daenerys in this up-and-coming battle. It's unclear if they are the actual Fiery Hand or just some flaming spear-wielding badasses, but Daenerys mentions the news from Melisandre to Jon. Jon then immediately does his brooding act, and he begins to explain how she murdered a child in the name of her god, and that she's not the best companion to keep at one side. Eventually the Red Priest, and this is just sort of skipping along here, but eventually the Red Priest and the Fire Soldiers meet up with Daenerys in the Dothraki outside of Winterfell. Mel lingers off in the edge of camp and doesn't make herself known until the first battle with the undead, and then a good chunk of the Fire Soldiers are wiped out, and she is needed alongside the other surviving Fire Priestesses to attempt to bring them back. Melisandre uses the last of her power to bring back some of the fallen. Doesn't mention if that's just the Red Priestesses or if it's other, main characters on the show. But her dying words are to Daenerys, and she tells Daenerys that she is Nissa Nissa and Jon is Azor Ahai. Together they need to forge Lightbringer, and Bran ultimately corroborates this. So apparently some time passes and they're not sure which episode this next information takes place in, but Sam ends up explaining to Daenerys and Jon the story of Azor Ahai and explain how they must travel to the lands of Always Winter and complete some sort of ritual. Sam explains that in the original story, Nissa Nissa is killed, and this is how Lightbringer is forged once the sword is ran through her heart, but then mentions that the Fire Priestesses can resurrect the dead. So if Bran and Mel are correct in their visions, Daenerys, after they complete the ritual, can be brought back to life. Now, I'm just going to pause right there for a second because I feel like I need to reiterate, these are a load of crap, but that is kind of interesting to think that somehow Bran and Sam and Melisandre, it's not too far to see Melisandre. I think Melisandre ultimately chooses Jon Snow as her champion. So if one of them has to be sacrificed, of course she's going to say Daenerys. But I don't really, I'll just continue on. Now, he ends out this leak by saying that somehow Jon is somehow convinced into stabbing Daenerys. They are unsuccessful in bringing her back, and it's not really made clear why they are unsuccessful in resurrecting her. Jon goes on to defeat the Night King, destroy Cersei, and bring order to Westeros. All the Stark live, but Dany, Tyrion, Cersei, Jaime, and loads of the second-tier class, Grey Worm, and Missandei included, die. He also mentions how the scene between Daenerys and the Dragon Pit, with Jon explaining, Daenerys is explaining to Jon how the dragons were powerful, majestic, and this happened in season 7. That's foreshadowing to how Jon will mount Drogon, and Drogon ends up surviving in the end, even though Daenerys does not. Oh man, I don't even know where to begin on that last part. I just want to say that anytime any of these Nissa Nissa leaks come up and Daenerys is mentioned as the Nissa Nissa and she has to get stabbed in order for Jon to forge Lightbringer, I just immediately call bullshit, because there's no way that Daenerys' journey of 7 seasons of conquering stuff, starting off with really nothing other than her name and sort of making it in this patriarchal society. There's no way that they would build 7 seasons up to that. That's almost the same as saying she's going to die off screen in during childbirth or something like that. I just can't see that type of ending for Daenerys. But one thing I also have to remind myself is this is Game of Thrones. And I said there's no way that Ned Stark, my favorite character, is going to die in the first season. I didn't believe it and still kind of think that there's a chance that he may still be alive. But that just goes to show you how epic this show is. One thing's for certain, if they do end up killing Daenerys in the TV show, I don't know if it's going to go down that way in the books. Hell, we don't even really know if Jon Snow is going to be brought back. I mean, he is, but we don't really know that for certain. Also, real quick, while I have you here, please slap a like on this video. I want to thank you all so much for watching. The like goal is going to be 420. Also, make sure you're subscribed and then make sure you have your notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. And if you're feeling so inclined, please check out my Teespring store and snag one of these Long Night Survivor hoodies while supplies last. I'm going to keep the designs up for a few days at a time and try rotating them for whichever ones you guys like. I want to thank you all again so much for watching. Super special shout out to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. I want to thank you all so much for watching. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Review.